What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It is me, Cameron Lawrence, doing my first ever solo show. Well, that's not completely true. It's technically my second. I had one recorded. It was beautiful. Would have been the greatest episode ever released, and we had some audio issues, so it never came out. So this is the first one you are hearing. I'm back. This is one of my first preview shows I've done in a while with all the traveling I've had to do. So I'm excited. But we're going to be talking about week 14 today on December 7th, 2020. You'll be coming out to you on December 8th, Thursday. Make sure you're following all the socials of Fantasy Football Fellas, at FF Fellas on Twitter, at the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell down below. Also, quick chalkboard plug. We got all of our friends over there, 1,600 of us strong, talking about fantasy football all day, every day. Trade questions, waiver wire, start sits, player props, all of that. But without a further ado, let's just jump right into some news and notes because there's some coming up, but I really just want to get into the games. I think obviously that's what we all live for is the games every single Sunday. So that's what I want to get to. Well, our news and notes are brought to you by Sleeper, the number one fantasy platform in the world with over 4 million users. You can check them out in the link in the description of this video. First thing, it's been widely believed that Odell Beckham Jr. is going to go to the Cowboys or Giants. But the Dallas Cowboys haven't made him an offer, and I don't think they will. Dallas doesn't believe that Odell is going to be ready till January, mid-January. Puts them maybe they'll have him in time for a conference championship, but that's a little late to get someone into your system. So Odell might not be signing with a team this year. Speaking of ACLs, Von Miller is actually out for the season with an ACL injury. That's huge for this Buffalo Bills defense. They really rely on him for that pass rush. So fantasy, looking forward. They've got a couple more divisional games coming up, so that could be huge for these teams like Tua, getting more time in the pocket, being able to throw the ball to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Mark Ingram is most likely going to be out for the season with an MCL injury. It just means the Saints are going to have to lean more heavily on Alvin Kamara, or they're going to bring up one of their backups. But yeah, I don't know how big of a blow that actually is for the Saints. They're kind of fighting for a top spot anyways. Patrick Mahomes' bruised foot will not be an issue, something they were slightly concerned about after the game on Sunday, but that will not be an issue any longer. And Baker Mayfield, we talked about it last week. I told you he might end up here, and he is officially a Ram. Yeah, I don't know what that does for anybody. I don't think it makes anyone too excited. I guess you want a reason to put people in the stands, and they think Baker's going to do it. Sean McVay liked Baker coming out of the draft. I don't see Baker being the long-term option here. He's just a short fix for the end of the season because they don't have a first. So you got to keep playing. You can't tank. Lamar Jackson has a PCL sprain. He'll miss 2 to 4 weeks. Obviously, they're right in the thick of it. They are 7-5, I believe. Right now, we're 8-4, one of the two. And so they're right in the middle of that playoff hunt. They need him back as fast as possible. So I'd assume it'd be about 2 weeks that they're going to miss Lamar Jackson. And then Wayne Gallman was just signed to the Seahawks. That's big because that shows maybe Ken Walker's not going to be back this week. Obviously, DJ Dallas is banged up, and so is Travis Homer. So their whole running back room is. So maybe it just means they just want some sort of depth. But yeah, so that running back room is kind of ambiguous moving forward into this week. Ooh, wow, I got to get used to all this talking that I got to do now. This is kind of crazy. All right. But that's it for the news and notes brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. And you can check them out, like I said before, in the description of the video below. Our Thursday night game of the week is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Rams. Raiders are favored by 5.5 points. But man, this just feels like an ugly primetime game. You got the 5-7 Raiders taking on this Rams team who doesn't have a quarterback anymore. Baker's going to be starting, obviously, but got to learn the offense, so it's going to be a pretty compressed book. It really felt like this was going to be Kyron Williams' backfield. Rams got a good um, running back schedule coming up. Obviously, the Rams a great team to play against. Then last week, Cam Akers comes in 70% of snaps out of nowhere. They've been phasing him out, phasing him out, phasing him out. And Sean McVay goes, we're just going to make a U-turn and go right back to Cam Akers. So you're staying away from them. You're not touching any of the Los Angeles Rams wide receivers. Obviously, you're not starting Baker Mayfield. On the Raiders side, Rams have actually been playing pretty well against the run. They're top half against the run. So, but you're still starting Jacobs. Jacobs is just too good. He's been too hot right now not to start. Obviously, starting Devontae Adams, who's on one of, if not the best 5-game stretches we've seen in past 5 to 10 years. As far as everybody else, if you really needed Mac Hollins, you could throw him in there. If you're really in a pinch, I know there's a ton of buys this week. If you need Foster Moreau, I know I'm starting him in one of my leagues because I need a tight end. But yeah, it's just gonna be an ugly game where you're not very excited about it. And if it is exciting, it's because there's a lot of turnovers in this one. Before we keep moving on, I do want to address just how many teams are on bye this week. We got the Falcons, Bears, Packers, Colts, Saints, Commanders. So we're talking about players like Drake London, Cordero Patterson, Justin Fields, David Montgomery, AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Christian Watson, Alan Lazard, Jonathan Taylor, Paris Campbell, Michael Pittman, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave. On the Commanders, you got Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, maybe we're starting Curtis Samuel or Josh Dotson or Jahan Dotson. But that's a lot of players to be out. So some of these players, like a Mac Hollins, you might have to be starting. That might be a legitimate conversation you're having this week is, do I start Raheem Mostert or Mac Hollins in my flex? And so Mac Hollins is not a bad option if you're looking at him, but obviously he's not my first choice. Looking at this Jets and Bills game, you might be forced to start Gabe Davis, but I would stay away. We just kind of saw that with Adam Thielen. You know, they've got 2 really good corners on this Jets team, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. But I'm going to stay away from Gabe Davis if I can. Obviously starting Diggs, obviously starting Josh Allen. If I'm looking for a running back on this side, I don't love where they're sitting at. Obviously, Cook played better last game, but Singletary's playing better the first 2 games or the 2 games before that. Kind of feels like the Rams backfield. I'd lean Cook. He's more involved in the passing game. But yeah, I'm not in love with either. On the Jets side, if Michael Carter plays, he's the guy to go to. Zonovan Knight, though, has been playing great. So if Michael Carter's out, I think you can start Zonovan Knight with a little bit of confidence. But yeah, they got the Bills minus 9.5 in this one. So the Jets are going to be throwing the ball. Mike White likes to throw it at 57 attempts last week against the Vikings, which means one thing, and that means that Garrett Wilson is in line for another great game. So you should be starting Garrett Wilson with confidence. He could be a playoff hero coming down the stretch. Next game on the docket is the Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. This means road Amari Cooper, who has been terrible. He had one of his best road performances. If you don't count the neutral site game against the Bills, he did play really well again in Detroit there. But a road Amari Cooper, he only had 4 catches on 9 targets for 40 yards last week against the Texans. Bengals have been playing well as of late. They're going to put up a lot of points. Mixon should be back in this, but you need to keep watching. You never know how it's going to go. And this is going to be a huge test for Deshaun Watson, who last week, he looked like it was the first time he picked up a football. He threw one great pass all game, and it was to a Texans defender. I would be very nervous starting Amari Cooper this week. I'm taking him out of my lineup where I've been starting him the last couple of weeks because I don't trust Deshaun Watson this week. I have no reason to. What he showed me against the Texans gave me no reason for belief. We saw it with Russell Wilson, just because the guy changed his teams this offseason and was great on one team does not mean he's going to be great on this new team. So, yeah, I am going to stay away from Amari Cooper in this one if I can. But like I said, there are a crazy amount of buys. So there are some teams where you have no choice and you're starting Amari Cooper. Like I'm starting Amari Cooper over Matt Collins for sure. But if I have that option, Devonta Smith or Amari Cooper, I'm going Devonta Smith this week, even though Amari Cooper is a top 15 wide receiver. On the Cincinnati side, obviously, you're starting Joe Mixon if he plays. You're starting Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. You're starting Joe Burrow. Those guys should have great weeks. Hayden Hurst isn't a bad option. If Njoku plays on the other side, he's not a bad option either. I would probably start Njoku over Hurst. I think Njoku is a top 10 option this week. Moving on, we have what may be the ugliest game of the week, and that is Houston at Dallas. We've seen Dallas rout the Vikings and Colts in 2 of their last 3 games, and this game might top it all. They might just put up 75 points, and it's going to be ugly. But it does mean Zeke and Pollard are both must starts this week. Nobody throws on the Texans because all you got to do is run up the middle every single time. Both these guys have been top 10 options 2 of the last 3 weeks in the same week together. So, that should give you just even more confidence. It doesn't matter who's getting the ball. They're both going to do well. But I'm going to stay away from Dameon Pierce. He's had a couple games against decent defenses, good run defenses, and he's put up like 6 points. I'm staying away from Dameon Pierce in this because for some of us, this is a must-win week, right? We got the playoffs coming next week. If you're on that edge, you're 7-6, 6-7. Some leagues it's 8-4, some leagues it's 5-8. You're fighting for that playoff spot to get in. And if you got CD and Dak, you should have lower expectations because they just don't need to throw the ball. They only really have to play for 2 quarters, especially in this game. They might have to try hard for the first drive, and then the game's over from there. So I would be very, very careful about CD and Dak in this game. And if you got someone better to start, I would go with them. Now let's move on to maybe the most disrespectful line of the entire season. We have the Detroit Lions favored against the Minnesota Vikings, although this line has shifted. Some places now they do have the Vikings, but it did start earlier in the week with the Lions favored against the Vikings. The 5-7 Lions favored against the 10-2 Vikings. It is ridiculous. However, I don't say that with any confidence because last time we thought it was ridiculous that a home favorite, the Vikings, were not favored. They got blown out 40-3 by the Dallas Cowboys. And we all know what happens when the Vikings play in Detroit. Well, I guess not all of us, but if you're a Vikings fan, you do because the Vikings do not play well. And so, yes, I am very scared, but for fantasy, this should be an amazing game. Vikings giving up close to 330 passing yards a game over their last 5. Detroit giving up close to 400 total yards. Vikings over 400 total yards a game. Both teams should be going back and forth. Both offenses have looked good. Last game, Kirk Cousins didn't look great, but against this Detroit Lions defense, you would think that they could start putting together a good game. So that means Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson. I'd start Adam Thielen. I think both Kirk and Jared Goff could be good streaming options this week. I'm starting both Detroit running backs because I think both of them will be in getting into the end zone in this one. DeAndre Swift took over the backfield again last week. Lucas just exclaimed his excitement for DeAndre Swift to be back, and I couldn't agree more. It's good to see him back. But if you are into DFS, this is a game you should be looking at. If you've got Jared Goff, DeAndre Swift, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, and you spend all your money on it, I don't blame you because they're all going to score. I got the Vikings in this one. I think they're going to come out and be upset that they're road underdogs at 10-2 against a 5-7 Detroit Lions team. So I'm hoping that they come out and look good. Next, we got another divisional matchup. Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. In this game, Devonta Smith actually has seen 8+ targets 5 of the last 6 weeks. Obviously hasn't resulted in great fantasy production. Last week it did. He had 21 fantasy points. If he finds the end zone, he's awesome. But the targets does give him a safe enough floor that I would be starting Devonta Smith this week. A.J. Brown obviously must start. Jalen Hurts could finish as quarterback 1 again on the season. You're starting both running backs in this game. Both defenses have been pretty good, but not great against the run. Barkley could have a huge week in this. But outside of that, you're not touching anyone. You got to keep continually staying away from these Giants pass catchers. Next up, we have our 5th out of 7 divisional matchups. We have the Baltimore Ravens with no Lamar Jackson against the home Pittsburgh Steelers, who are favored in this one. Obviously, last year, Tyler Huntley filled in pretty well for Lamar Jackson. He has a similar play style to Lamar. He can move well, he can throw the ball on the run, but I do not know if it's enough. He's really only got Mark Andrews. Yeah, he's got Demarcus Robinson and Devin Duvernay, but he's really only got Mark Andrews in this one. I still think Mark Andrews is a good start. I think Pickens is a good start for the Steelers, but I'm still going to stay away from Deontay Johnson. Kenny Pickett is obviously favoring George Pickens, although last week he didn't. But now George Pickens comes out and complains. You got to think squeaky wheel gets the grease, as Lucas continually has said all season. Someone complains, especially a rookie like this, they're going to target him. As for Najee Harris for the Steelers, the Ravens have allowed 52 rushing yards per game over the last 5 weeks. I've said it multiple times on this podcast already. You might not have a choice, but if you can stay away from Najee, I would in this one. 52 rushing yards a game. That's ridiculously low. I would definitely be looking to stay away. Moving on, we have Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Titans are currently giving up 324 passing yards per game over the last 5 weeks, most in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence, great streaming option in this one. Christian Kirk, top 10 option this week. And then we all know on the other side of the ball who's getting it every single snap, and that's King Henry, who has lit up this NFC or AFC South his entire career. I don't see it stopping here. I think it's going to be Henry on the ground for the Titans, and I think it's going to be Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence through the air. Zay Jones is also a good start in this one. I haven't heard yet if Treylon Burks is back. I would assume he is still out with the new concussion protocols. He got absolutely smacked on Sunday in the head. So we're hoping he gets better, but I would assume he's out. Not going to try and play a game with Robert Woods on that side of the ball. Next up, we have our last divisional matchup of the week. The Kansas City Chiefs favored by 9.5 points over the Denver Broncos. This was supposed to be an amazing game, but Russell Wilson decided that this season he didn't want to play good at all. I mean, Russell Wilson's been terrible. He's currently on pace for 12 passing touchdowns in the season. That's what? He's getting paid $200 million over 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, I mean, what? He's thrown every touchdown's worth now $3 million. That's pretty rough. This Broncos defense has been playing well, though. They're giving up an average of 18 points per game over the last 5 games, but the Kansas City Chiefs have been pretty unbelievable on offense. Even in this last game against Cincinnati, still scoring 24 points, just didn't get into the end zone as much. But we're moving the ball pretty well. But yeah, I'm going to say that especially if the Broncos can't move the ball, Kansas City offense is just going to overwhelm this defense. I'm going to stay away from, the Kansas City wide receivers. I'm not going to try to play that roulette. They've been on, they've been off. I don't want to deal with it. You're starting Travis Kelce. I would start Pacheco in this one. You're starting Mahomes. Sutton's been banged up this last couple weeks. Greg Dulcich might be a good start, but other than that, I'm going to stay away on the Broncos side. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, Seahawks favored in this one, as they should be. On the Seattle Seahawks side of the ball, we talked about it briefly before. Kenneth Walker probably going to be out of this one. That means Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, Wayne Gallman are going to be the guys who are going to fill in. So I don't really want to play roulette with that, try to figure out who's starting, who's getting the carries. But for me, what I'm really excited about in this game is if I got one of these wide receivers, because they've been the wide receiver 10 and 11 over the last 5 weeks. They've been tied in points per game. They've looked amazing. Geno Smith has been playing out of his mind and is keeping up. And so you're starting both of them with confidence. On the other side of the ball, DJ Moore, man, I can't trust DJ Moore. I don't feel like I can start him, but you probably have to because he was a high draft pick. But if you have Deonta Foreman, you need to be starting him with full confidence. This Seattle defense is allowing 184 yards per game over their last 4 games. 184. Deonta Foreman, when he gets volume, has been really, really good. And he's going to get a lot of volume in this one. So I would start I would start Deontay Foreman with confidence. You can probably start DJ Moore and get 10 to 15. It's probably going to be 8 to 15 fantasy points, to be honest. Now, at least it's Sam Darnold and not Baker Mayfield. But yeah, not feeling too amazing about that one. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers obviously moving forward with no Jimmy G on the season. They got Brock Purdy. They decided not to go after Baker. They wouldn't have gotten him anyways. Not signing any other quarterbacks, which leaves me to only trust CMC this week. You can start Debo because obviously they're going to have to try to get him involved more. But I'm not touching Ayuk this week. And Kittle, man, it would be very difficult to start Kittle. But at the same time, 99% of you don't have anyone better. If I had Kittle, he would be the best tight end on all of my teams right now. So you're going to start Kittle. You're probably going to start Debo because Debo could have a really good game. It just depends how they get him involved. But CMC is the only one that you have full confidence in going into this game. We saw that last week. They can lean on him. He'll get 5, 6, 7 receptions. On the other side of the ball, Mike Evans needs a get-right game. It has been the Godwin show completely over the last couple weeks. Ever since he returned, really, Evans just has looked out of sync with Tom Brady. Brady's been throwing him the ball, but they're just not on the same page, missing some deep shots, missing some stuff, even just some shorter passes. You're starting God with confidence in the running back room. You are fully in on starting Rachaad White as the starter. Although I do think Leonard Fournette can still be started, especially this week, like we've said over and over with all of the buys. Moving on to our Sunday night game. We get the game of Tua and Justin Herbert. This is a huge game for those social media fans following the Acho versus everybody on Justin Herbert and the Tua people, everyone pushing the Tua narrative. For me personally, I just think it's distracting. I think I said this last week. It's just distracting from how good Joe Burrow is as a quarterback because you're debating, is it Burrow or is it Herbert or Tua in this draft class? No, it's Burrow. I know that's not the debate, but I would start everybody who is a starter in this one. So you're starting Herbert, you're starting Keenan Allen. I would start Josh Palmer, Austin Eckler. I'd be okay starting Gerald Everett in this one even. On the Miami side, you got to start Tua, obviously, Hill, Waddle, if he's playing. Waddle was banged up, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine. I would probably stay away from Gesicki. But if you need a running back, I would be okay. I'd be okay for sure starting Jeff Wilson. Raheem Mostert is a maybe. But if like we said earlier, I think if you're on like a Mac Hollins or Raheem Mostert, I might go for Raheem Mostert because this Chargers defense has been so awful against the run. It is ridiculous. And then for our last game of the week, we have the Patriots versus the Cardinals. Just everyone's so excited to watch this game, clamoring over it. On the New England side of the ball, Jacoby Myers hasn't been playing great as of late. I mean, I would look elsewhere, but obviously if you need to start him, you got to. Hunter Henry, I do think is worth a shot. Cardinals have been very, very awful against the tight end. Patriots haven't been great themselves, but I'm not going to try and trust Trey McBride. But Henry, to get a touchdown in this game, which is what he usually needs to be fantasy relevant, I would bank on it. I would. Ramondre will be fine. James Conner will be fine. I mean, D-Hop, Marquise Brown, they'll be great for fantasy-wise. I think Marquise Brown's going to be fully back this week after playing one game and then having a bye. And then obviously you're starting Kyler. But I think the Cardinals will have a good fantasy game. But I really don't think they're going to win this ball game against the Patriots. All right, with that, everybody, good luck as we're just preparing for playoffs, everything coming up. The last week, get everybody in that you can. Go for gold, go for broke. I hope you make the playoffs. Hope next time I see you, Tyler and Lucas will see you on Saturday. Next time I'm talking to you, you'll be in the playoffs. You'll be ready to go for the rest of the season. All righty. Make sure that you're following us on the FFLs at Twitter or the FFL is on Instagram. Sorry, FFL is on Twitter. Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. But with all that, deuces, and we'll see you next week.